Some breaking news here. Jamal Murray comes to terms on an extension with the Denver Nuggets, going to put him in Denver for at least the next 5 seasons. We're going to break down the deal. I'm Trevor Lane, joined by Donnie. May know him as D Free. Donnie, how you doing?
Doing pretty good, man. How about you?
I'm doing well. Happy to get this breaking news here on a Saturday. Denver Nuggets star, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, Jamal Murray has agreed on a 4-year, $208 million maximum contract extension, according to his agents, and the deal guarantees Murray $244 million over the next 5 seasons and secures a franchise cornerstone for a Western contender. Now, what's funny is Shams Charania actually has it's a 4-year, $209 million deal and $245 million over, as though they just have to be a little bit different just to kind of mess with each other a little bit. But this is a 4-year deal for Jamal Murray. Again, that adds 4 years onto the 1 year remaining on his contract. Just on the surface, before we dive into what Jamal Murray's done, do you like this move for Denver, locking up Murray long term?
I think I think I like it a lot just in general in terms of remaining or keeping the continuity, but I also think you kind of have to do this deal anyway. So whether I like it or not, I mean, I think they have to do it. I like it though from the sense of the remaining continuity, like I said, or keeping continuity again with their top 3, especially because you need that. You need to at least keep your top guys around. It's just unfortunate that on the fringes they didn't have or weren't able to do the exact same thing. So
Yeah. Well, and part of that is the new CBA coming into effect and it causing them to lose guys like Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Bruce Brown. They lost the year before, but Jamal Murray will be part of the team for the future. Now, it's interesting because this took a lot longer than you would have expected. This type of contract, getting this big deal. Typically, this is the kind of thing that there's not a whole lot of negotiating. If Jamal Murray was one of your core guys, you just give him the deal and off you go. The fact that we're talking about this here in September is a little bit of a surprise. The fact that Jamal Murray didn't want to get it done before the Olympics is a surprise. And then he was awful in the Olympics. And that suddenly threw all this into question. How confident were the Nuggets in giving him this giant long-term contract, given how terrible he was for Canada in the Olympics? So it's a bit of a weird situation that here we are, September, talking about this extension that frankly we thought probably was going to get done back at the beginning of July.
So I think that the poor performance in the playoffs, which was masked by the Lakers game winners, and also the poor performance against the Timberwolves following series, was probably a little bit as to why there was a little bit of cause for pause and why they decided to maybe pull back on it. There was probably, obviously, I would say, a lot of negotiation going on the back end. I think for the Nuggets, they've been so conscientious of their cap sheets and stuff like that. As like we mentioned a moment ago, this new CBA is going to make these teams do. The Nuggets seem to have hit that tip a little bit sooner. They started letting pieces they started hemorrhaging pieces basically right after winning a championship. So they've been on a little bit longer. And I think with Jamal, they're like, okay, there's some injury concern. You didn't play great in the playoffs. And then you follow that up with them saying, okay, we'll talk about this a little bit later. And then him performing poorly in the Olympics. He looked terrible in the Olympics the entire run. And then all of a sudden you get to this point where it's like, we don't really want to give him this, but the problem is you can't really replace that cap slot if you're a team like this going forward. You have to keep your guys. And so they're almost were strong-armed into it. But I say that not to disparage him. When he's on, he is one of the best playoff risers you're going to see. He's going to take it to another level. He's basically Jimmy Butler West, if you will, maybe a bit of high praise. But if you look prior to pretty much if you look at prior to this season, he was basically Jimmy Butler West, where he was doing that, where he's giving you 18, 19 points in the regular season, just kind of coasting. Then it's 25 in the playoffs. He's just going crazy. So all in all, I do like them retaining their guy and keeping their star alongside Jokic. He's also somebody that's a little bit of a weird case too, because he's coasting through the regular season, and that means he's not getting accolades too. So he's a little bit of an enigma. So you don't really know what you're going to get from a game-to-game basis other than the typical maybe 18, 19, 20 points. But I think that's still really solid when you've got a hub like Jokic there to basically carry your team anyway. So basically with him, I think if you get him to the right situations, if he's healthy, if everything's even, I think he can help you, which is why they're offering this big investment.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this last year's playoff run. Even though he hit the big shots against the Lakers, he was not efficient at all in doing so. And so those big shots kind of masked how poorly he actually played. 29% from three. That's not Jamal Murray shot 42% from three in the regular season, 29% in the playoffs against the Lakers. And that didn't get much better against the Wolves, 33%. And then that slump carried over for Canada. And frankly, he looked like he had lost his confidence when he was playing for Canada in the Olympics. He looked like a completely different player. So what we've seen from him most recently has not been good. But again, over the course of the season, if you go take a look at his season-long stats, I mean, hyper efficient, gets the job done, just knocking in shots. 43% from three this last season, 40% the season before, averaging 20 points. But you're right, there is something to his game where he doesn't quite get those regular season accolades that you were talking about. He doesn't get the same attention that, say, I don't know if I want to go Steph Curry because, you know, he's on a different tier than most guys. But I think we talk more even about De'Aaron Fox than Jamal Murray during the regular season and the job that he did. I think there's certainly other players that are getting more attention. Part of that is just Murray's hyper efficient, yet not always flashy game unless he's, you know, hitting a big clutch shot late. But that's part of it. But Jamal Murray sticking with the Denver Nuggets long term, I think he's a good fit. And this is a sign that the Nuggets believe that everything that's happened since the playoffs, we're talking about both playoff series and then with Team Canada, that all of that is an outlier because the amount that they're paying him says they believe he is still a max star, one of the best players in the NBA, and time will tell if that's true or not. I think there's another thing we have to factor in here, though, and that's this story that just came out a couple of days ago that, according to Zach Lowe, Denver and their coach, Mike Malone, were not seeing eye to eye with the head coach in the front office. The problem being that, of course, if you're the head coach and you see guys like KCP walk away over money, you see guys like Bruce Brown walk away, you're not going to be happy with that. But also because they're navigating this extension for Jamal Murray, and Mike Malone doesn't want to go into training camp with this extension not taken care of. So maybe this is a bit of not just does Denver keep Jamal Murray happy, but this is you had an angry Mike Malone that you were dealing with as well. Let's get this done before camp starts in a few weeks, and let's just be finished with the situation so we can move on and just focus on basketball.
Yeah, you definitely don't want this. If you're any team, you definitely don't want a situation like this with one of your best players lingering into the next season. If you're hoping to retain that player services, unless you're trying to obviously shop them off or ship them off, that's an entirely different thing. So I think this probably was a bit of it too. And there's a mention in here as well about Aaron Gordon as well. So I'm not really sure what the Nuggets are going to be doing, if they're going to be penny pinching, if you will, going forward. It's just, like I said a moment ago, I feel like they also had no choice but to do this. Even if they didn't feel he was 100% worth it in aggregate, maybe he's, like I said, more of a playoff guy, which is perfectly fine. They really don't have much of a choice. Also, when you look back to his regular season production, it also tapers off a little bit there because he's so injury prone. He's always dealing with something, it seemed like. And I remember I was looking at the game log that you had up, or his career log there, excuse me. His games played, it was about 49, I believe, for the last season. That's just not going to cut it for a max player typically. So I think that's part of the reason too why there was some cause for pause. He's always kind of dealing with something. His first few years he was healthy, but then the last 5 or so, not so much. There's some shortened season in there too for a couple of those.
True. Yeah. You got the COVID season there with 48 games, 59 games last season, 65 the season before. So yeah, there have been some injury issues with Jamal Murray as well. Of course, he had that knee injury. So that's, you know, something that they have to factor into. But obviously they're comfortable with it. They gave him the big deal. And we'll see what Denver. Where do you have Denver ranked overall this season? Do you have them in the top tier in the Western Conference? Now they've got this cap sheet here is starting to get rounded out. You lose KCP, Christian Brown's going to have to fill in that role. What do you have them still in the upper echelon in the Western Conference?
Man, there's one name on here that's like people are going to automatically say that they got worse by adding that one name. I'm not so sure he's going to fit. Yeah, I'm not so sure he's going to fit.
Oh, no, Russell Westbrook.
I'm not so sure about the fit there. The spacing is going to be really bad. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with that. I also would like to see them maybe build out the bench a little bit more. I do like the addition of Saric. I don't believe he was here last season. I think with Murray, he's the X factor here, because Jokic is such a high floor raiser that they are going to, with him, probably at least wind up being a 6 seed, just period. And then you add in the rest of these guys. Yeah, I think to answer your question, they're an easy lock for a top 4 seed, regardless of fit or spacing or concerns, like I mentioned earlier. If you could pull back up Murray's playoff numbers, that's where I would like to kind of hedge my bets with him, because when you look at, we're going to get to it in a second, when you look at his production from the postseason that we just had, and then the year prior where they won the championship, there is a huge difference. So with Murray, the question is, you mentioned earlier if the last season's production was an outlier. My question is if the season prior, the production for the playoffs was an outlier, because he was blistering that entire playoffs and he couldn't miss anything. So that was one of the big reasons why that over-the-top shot making he had was one of the big reasons why they won that championship. So if he's able to do anything even remotely similar to that, then I would like their chances very much. It almost reminds me of a similar situation that other teams have, where it's like, just get me to the playoffs healthy and we'll see what happens. So I like their team a lot, with that being their top 2 guys. And then obviously that says nothing about their other 3rd and 4th best players too. It's just losing KCP. I feel
That
like
hurts.
I don't know if you feel the same way. I feel like KCP was starting. He had already kind of peaked, maybe starting to decline just a smidge there. I feel like that's probably what was happening for him, and probably would be on a decline for the next few years at this point too. He's already 30 now. So I feel like if they could get good production from their bench, that's what they're hoping for at this point.
Yeah, and that's what they're going to need to get, because now you've got to have that kind of depth around your stars, and you have to be able to build up new talent, and that's part of the new CBA. But you look against the Lakers that year that won the championship, almost 33 points per game if we round up. I mean, my goodness, he was red hot, and then that drops down significantly against the Wolves, even against the Lakers, and he hit big shots, so people don't remember that he was actually pretty inefficient. So we'll see which version of Jamal Murray shows up next season. With the amount the Nuggets just paid him, they're certainly hoping that it's the playoff guy from 2 seasons ago and not the guy that we've seen over the last 4 months or so here, from the NBA playoffs into the Olympics, and hopefully that he can bounce back to start the season. But everybody, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Big 4-year extension for Jamal Murray, a long-term commitment from the Denver Nuggets. Do you like this move for Denver? Should they have done it, or should they have tried to fight for more of a short-term deal? Give me your thoughts in the comment section. Don't forget to subscribe and go check out our latest video breaking down Brandon Ingram. He no-showed on the New Orleans Pelicans. Take a look at that one. We take a look at what's going on with that situation and why he could be the next big player on the way out via trade. Till next time, everybody. See ya and stay safe.